in the high desert in the great American Southwest.
Welcome to Coast AM. John, welcome to the program. Good to have you with us. You're with us.
Welcome to Coast PM, the number one unofficial Coast to Coast AM podcast. We are two brothers who analyze the world's largest overnight paranormal radio show, Coast to Coast AM. My name is Paul, and I'm the guy that listens to this inexplicable radio show here with my brother.
Hey, it's Chris. I'm the Jamie to your Joe Rogan, except we don't make hundreds of millions of dollars off of this show.
We do not, Chris. We do all of this for free.
$0, in fact.
We should really monetize.
We may actually be in the red.
We lose money doing this.
We lose money doing this podcast. So come on down. Come listen to us lose money.
This is a labor of love, Chris. A labor of love.
That's exactly right.
But, you know, that's how it goes. Well, Chris, today in this labor of love that is our podcast, we have another show. And this one, I also think you're going to like.
Oh, yeah? What do we got here?
This is going to be George Noory's interview with Andy Lloyd from June 4th of 2019. Andy is a researcher who joined to discuss his research into Nibiru, Planet X, and Nemesis.
Oh, I don't even know what Nemesis is. I'm guessing not Star Trek Nemesis, Paul.
Not Star Trek Nemesis, no. A giant planet out there that is hurling asteroids at us is basically what Nemesis is.
So these are three separate planets somewhere in our solar system.
Yes, these are either planets or brown dwarfs or red dwarfs. There's some sort of celestial body that are out there in the solar system that we're trying to find right now.
Okay. All right. Interesting.
Okay. They may or may not have aliens on them as well.
I've always, have heard of Planet X and Nibiru. I always kind of thought they were the same thing, but it sounds like they're actually different.
I think it depends on who you're talking to.
Okay.
They just give different names to it. There's also Planet 9 is a name that's sort of given to this, but that's by actual astronomers as opposed to what this guy is.
But right. Of course. Yeah. They're not going to be like, oh, yeah, there's a Nibiru somewhere out there in the Oort belt. There
could be. We don't know. We're still looking.
Yeah, right.
But before we get to any of that, Chris,
we got a little Tim time, baby.
Got to check in with Tim Banal at the Coast to Coast AM blog.
Tim time.
Today's article from Tim Banal: Florida cop photographs UFO behind a plane.
What a picture.
It is a picture indeed. So from the article, we're going to see if this is blowing the UFO phenomena wide open, Chris.
I hope it does. I hope Tim did it for us.
This is it. A police officer in Florida was understandably bewildered when he caught sight of a UFO following an airplane and then saw the craft fly away at a tremendous speed once it had seemingly been spotted. According to a local media report, the weird incident occurred early this month in the community of Bradenton Beach as Charles Morose was out on patrol.
Oh, yes, the world-famous Bradenton Beach.
It is one of the best beaches in the country, I'm sure.
A lot of alien tourism going down in Bradenton Beach, Paul.
I mean, if I was an alien visiting Earth, you probably want to go to a beach.
Do you think President Biden goes to this beach a lot?
No, I'm going to guess he doesn't.
That was a Brandon joke.
Oh, there we go. Did not catch that.
Okay.
Very
Sorry.
subtle.
Keep going. This is derailed.
While watching a Coast Guard plane flying overhead, the officer was taken aback when he noticed that there was, quote, a big black thing in the sky behind it.
Oh, no comment, Paul.
No comment. By his estimation, the object was, quote, at least the size of a car or maybe a small aircraft.
Oh, wow. So kind of a small craft.
Not too big. Intriguingly, it would appear that Morose was not the only one who saw the UFO, as he says that the plane turned around as if to pursue the anomalous object. At that point, the officer was astonished when the anomaly, which had largely stayed stationary in the sky, suddenly, quote, shot off like a rocket towards the horizon, and it was just gone.
Wow. That's interesting that multiple people saw it.
Well, He's technically the only one that saw it. He's saying the plane saw it because the plane turned.
Oh, I see. So he's claiming that if there were people in this plane, they probably saw it.
He's claiming the plane attempted to chase it. This is not a jet, though. This looked like just a very large plane. So I don't know if they would actually. I was going to say,
I still haven't seen the picture yet, so I'm unaware of what any of this looks like.
We'll show you in a second.
Okay.
Morose marveled that the puzzling anomaly, quote, had to be moving at least 500 miles per hour.
Yeah, it was moving at least at a hop speed of like 75 miles per hour.
Dude, at that point, you're just making it up. It was going like 1,000 miles an hour, probably.
It was like breaking at least 3 sound barriers.
Since the area is part of his regular patrol, Morose says that he's very familiar with the aircraft that populate the skies there, and he is certain that the object was neither drone nor bird.
Dude, this cop sounds like such a dingleberry. Yeah, I know just about old planes that patrol my skies. I look up every once in a while and I say, I don't know that plane, but then I take a real good look again. And then, yeah, for sure, I do know it. So, yeah, you can say I pretty much run things around here pretty good.
He knows his skies, which is interesting because I feel like a cop's job is on the ground.
Right. You would think so, but this guy is just staring up at planes trying to identify them.
Yeah, apparently the cops at Bradenton Beach are very bored. So from the police officer, quote, I'm no UFO conspiracy theorist, and I'm not saying it was from space or anything like that, but there was something in the sky, and it was hauling butt.
Oh, dude, that's like, it reminds me of the Ancient Aliens meme where it's like, I'm not saying it's aliens, but it's aliens.
But it was aliens.
But it was definitely aliens.
Fortunately, Morose managed to snap a picture of the oddity seen below, which resembles a black rectangular object. Attempting to get to the bottom of the strange story, a local newspaper investigating the case contacted the Coast Guard, but were told that they knew of no unusual incidents that occurred at the time of the officer's sighting.
Inconclusive, Paul.
Inconclusive.
Can I see a picture of this, Paul?
Yes, you can.
Let's do it.
All right, so here is the picture. Chris, can you describe to me what you are seeing?
Well, we're seeing the back of what looks to be a cargo airplane, Paul, of some sort, some kind of either, I'm seeing here that it's a Coast Guard plane, so that's interesting. There is definitely a black splotch up there, and it's definitely not a bird or anything. It's kind of oval almost, maybe. It kind of reminds me a little bit of what people call like cigar UFOs.
It looks a little bit like a hockey puck to me.
A little bit like a hockey puck. That's an even better description of it, Paul.
Yeah, it's about a hockey puck that is seemingly above this aircraft, maybe behind it, maybe in front of it. I don't really know.
It's definitely pretty interesting, but I'm going to go with an inconclusive, Paul.
So we didn't solve the UFO phenomena?
Not today, sadly, but maybe next time. Maybe the next Tim Binnall article will definitely get it locked down.
We are going to break it here on Coast to Coast PM after Coast to Coast AM breaks it on their blog.
Right, exactly.
It's going to be great.
It'll be a follow-up breaking event, possibly several weeks later if we didn't catch it directly on the day we record.
If I wasn't paying good enough attention, yes.
Yeah.
All right, Chris, some housekeeping. We have an email address. Send your thoughts or episode requests to c2cpmpod@gmail.com. That is using the number 2 instead of TO. If you like the show, drop us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and smash that subscribe button. We release episodes every Thursday, and that'll make sure that you never miss one. And thank you to everyone that has told friends about us. We don't advertise or go on other podcasts. This is 100% organic growth, so please keep it up.
Dude, I'm putting the do not disturb sign up next week.
What does that mean?
Because it's housekeeping.
Oh,
jeez,
man, your jokes are just whizzing right over my head.
Am I not funny, or are you not smart?
One of the two, probably both, is what's happening.
Hey, you guys reach out to us and tell me if I'm funny, please.
We would really appreciate it.
Please tell me if I'm funny.
As always, we don't make any money off this. We only run off your good vibes. So send your love to c2cpmpod@gmail.com.
Posy vibes only for an artisanal podcast. Let's get to the show now.
To the show. George Noory's interview with Andy Lloyd, June 4th, 2019. Now, Andy Lloyd, this is basically all this guy does now. He just looks at the sky and researches potential planetary objects that are out there that we don't know about that may or may not have aliens on them. So here's the question, Chris.
So is he like a semi-astronomer?
No, he's
amateur astronomer.
I would say he's more like an amateur journalist.
Okay.
He's a bit Graham Hancocky in that he's very specific in what he journalizes on.
Okay.
And
got
specifically
it.
Space stuff.
Okay, cool. Let's go.
So number one question from George Noory. How'd you get
into this?
Zechariah Sitchin, I guess, captured my attention. I think anyone who reads any of Zechariah Sitchin's work, it captures their attention.
It does. It does. It captured mine too.
Yeah, and I was really sort of taken with the ingenuity of his work, and the whole conceptual basis. It seemed to bring together so many different strands of thinking. It was very logical. It's very well thought out, well researched, and I really enjoyed reading his books. And because George, I got something of a science background. When I was reading through Sitchin's work, whenever he'd start talking about Nibiru, I would immediately start in my mind thinking, okay, is this possible?
Mm-hmm.
What's the evidence here? Clearly, there could be a Planet X because astronomers have been looking for Planet X for the best part of 150 years.
Dude, I wonder if Zechariah Sitchin understood when he was first writing, what was it, Chariots of the Gods, how important of a book that was going to be for conspiracy theories decades later.
Yeah, or just the alien community in general, I guess.
Right.
He laid a foundation, that others are still following to this day. Sitchin has since passed away, but while he was alive, huge impact.
Huge. Well, and the impact is ongoing.
Yeah.
I mean, Ancient Aliens, the TV show, is just like all these guys who had the same experience as Andy Lloyd.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and they were just like, oh, wow, this makes a ton of sense. It all comes from Zechariah Sitchin. It's all like a direct link to one guy.
All 15 seasons of Ancient Aliens that is still going on.
It's one guy.
It's all because of him.
It's just one guy who was like, well, this is kind of weird. And then just was just like, aliens gave us our technology. And then everyone was like, okay, yeah, I buy it.
This makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, we haven't discussed Sitchin on the show really before. We've just kind of vaguely mentioned him, I think.
Yeah. I'm almost wondering, Paul, if we don't need to do like Godfathers of Conspiracy Pod, because I think Sitchin would be up there, and do like explainers, right? Like, this is what Sitchin believes. This is what Bill Cooper believes. This is what, shit, dude, even somebody like the Unabomber, right? I mean, he's kind of a godfather of conspiracy too.
We might need to think of a different word than Godfather. Godfather feels a little too
religious.
Yeah, that's a little uncomfortable there when talking specifically about conspiracy theorists. More just like, we'll workshop that. People that kind of lay the foundation for where a lot of people went since then.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. From a critical perspective. But first off, Sitchin. What's up with him? What does he think? Because I know some of our listeners may not be familiar with Sitchin. So yeah. George Noory was nice to give a 1 minute explainer of Sitchin's theories, which was really convenient.
Let's go.
He believed that there is this planet X in the solar system called Nibiru, which is on a 3,600-year elliptical orbit. That's why you can't see it all the time. It takes 3,600 years to go around the sun. And that it was inhabited by who he calls the Anunnaki, who came to this planet because they were looking for gold to pulverize and sprinkle in their atmosphere to protect it. And when they got here, they decided they didn't want to be the ones digging for the gold and doing all this stuff. So let's create something that's already on the planet and genetically alter them a little bit, and they'll work for us. And that's where we came in. Whatever species might have been on the planet at the time, the Anunnaki apparently genetically altered them Adam and Eve, sort of, and here we are. And then, we mined for gold. They took it. They left the planet, apparently, and off they went.
That's the precursor ancient alien theory, right? Big time. Advanced civilization, spacefarers come to Earth, genetically alter us somehow, make us into some kind of work slaves for a resource. And then they disappear.
Yeah. And what
that's the lore. That is the vertical lore. People have added to it. People have changed little parts of it. But like throughout ancient alien theory, that is the key similarities.
And the thing that Sitchin was specifically saying about Nibiru was that Nibiru was a planet in our solar system that would swing around, every couple thousand years. And then that was when they had essentially hopped over to Earth and then made us mine for our gold and then went back to their planet and then flew back off.
So 3,600 years is a pretty interesting date because that means that Nibiru has been around for at least human writing.
Which is where the concepts that Sitchin lays down in his books comes from, is from ancient Sumerian texts. So a lot of it was because he was interpreting Sumerian texts and said, this is when they came down and it's going to come back around, every 3,600
years. And so we're probably due for seeing Nibiru relatively soon, huh?
According to Sitchin, but Andy has a different idea of what that's going to look like that we'll get into. That's separate from Sitchin's work, but Sitchin kind of lays the foundation for his structure of research. It's kind of where he started. So
this 3,600 year elliptical around our Earth, I'm assuming that Sitchin gets this from ancient Sumerian texts.
I believe it's from the texts that he bases that off of. There's not a planet for us to find to actually, make judgment on what its orbits look like. But most of what he was doing was Sumerian texts. I believe he also started going to more like biblical texts and basically just various religious texts around the world, and then being like, which one of these things are aliens? You know what I mean?
Right. Well, and we kind of get a similar thing with Graham, right? Graham going into kind of ancient stories and looking for flood myths or looking for, different kind of connections that all these seemingly disparate cultures have told themselves and what similarities they all share.
Yeah. But back to Planet X. So
yes,
Planet
let's get
X
back to this.
This is the idea that there is another planet out there that we are not familiar with. We have 8 planets plus Pluto plus a couple other small ones like Pluto.
Right.
But Andy believes that there is another planet that we're still not able to see right now. Potentially there's an actual system out there. And this is not crazy. Like astronomers do think this has potential.
What's it? The Kuiper Belt? So it's somewhere out in the Kuiper Belt.
Potentially. There's a couple different places they're looking for, but beyond Neptune, essentially.
Some who are very open to that idea, and some who are, academic, professional astronomers who really sort of get the bug with this. It's kind of a holy grail type thing. And they really want to who doesn't want to have their name attached to the discovery of a new planet? I mean, it's big, but it's just such a big potential discovery for science. So there's a lot of people who get really into it. Science is evidence-based. You've got to follow the evidence, but they're sort of taken with that bug, and I guess I've got that bug as well, really, thanks to Zechariah. And then there are, as you say, detractors. There are people who remain very cynical about it. Now, science is about cynicism. It's about looking at the evidence and questioning it and being critical. And if everybody just accepted the possibility that it's there and without the evidence, that wouldn't be right either. So it's very healthy to have that.
So Paul, let's put our goggles on and our white lab coats and let's do a little science.
Let's do some science.
So one of the majority, or maybe it's the plurality, of star systems are based off of binary star systems, right? So most suns out there have a twin. It is believed that the sun does have a twin out there, but for whatever reason, it didn't ignite. It could have been that there wasn't enough mass. It did ignite for a little bit and then ran out of fuel very, very quickly. And so the assumption is that there could really be a very large, maybe Jupiter sized, maybe even a little bit bigger than that, planet somewhere out there that's supposed to be binarily attached to our sun, but it's completely dark out there. It could just be now a dark, lump of solid metal now. And so it would be incredibly hard to see it all the way out there.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing, is that there could have been something that was flung out, and it's really far. It's small, or it's big, but it's dark, and all we can kind of see is maybe the impact it's having on some surrounding asteroids or something to that
exactly.
Effect. And that's why a lot of astronomers are like, this isn't crazy. Like,
yeah, this isn't insane. And that's what I've seen, is that astronomers actually like, it's possible that there is something out there.
Yeah, and one of the things that I saw as well in researching for this episode was that a lot of astronomers also say, there is potential that there was something that was in our system, but 4 billion years ago, it kind of got flung off, right? And it's no longer there. This was actually something that came into play a lot in the 80s when Nemesis was first brought up by a lot of astronomers, was that there was a dwarf out there that was like going in on this massive orbit, was like flinging asteroids back into the system every couple millennia or whatever it was. And that was what was leading to the cycle of extinction, because, asteroids kept like being hurled at Earth. Right.
Right.
Now that's no longer believed by, the vast majority of scientists from what I was seeing, because the extinction process doesn't occur as cyclically as they used to think. There's more variability to it than we initially thought. So like, okay, that probably doesn't make sense. We also haven't found anything like that, but it's not a crazy thing, right? It was something that they were looking at really seriously in the 80s.
Right. Okay, cool. So we are somewhat dealing in the realm of science.
Yes, we definitely are. And let's actually jump into a bit of him discussing Nemesis and kind of talking through what that was thought to be.
And again, this is a different thing.
Yes, this is a different thing.
I was very interested in this Nibiru, and I wanted to understand how it was that a planet beyond Pluto, which would be, extremely cold, could support life. And I was also reading at the time and interested in the concept of a body called Nemesis, which is sort of an alternative outer solar system planet, but of much bigger size. So the idea of Nemesis, which was a concept that came out in the 1980s, was that it was a very small substellar object, like a brown dwarf potentially, that would be flung out into the very outer reach of the solar system. So its orbit around the sun would be about 27-30 million years long. And the idea of this planet was that periodically its orbit would sort of fluctuate, and it would move through a comet cloud. And when it moved through the comet cloud, it would fling comets down into the inner solar system. And every 27 or 30 million years ago, we would get bombarded by these comets.
Okay, so Nemesis is kind of my theory. The brown dwarf somewhere out, way far away, maybe even in the Oort cloud, right? Like almost a light year away.
Yeah, very far out.
Very far out.
Yeah, and I did look into all these claims that he was making, and he's right. Like in the 80s, that's what some people were saying, was maybe there is potentially a brown dwarf or a large planet that is out there somewhere that is causing, these patterns that we're seeing.
But so let's take out that this is causing the extinctions on some kind of cyclical pattern. Do astronomers still believe that it's possible there's a brown dwarf out there still, or has this theory kind of gone to the wayside?
We'll get to that. They are currently looking for a ninth planet. There are people who are taking,
but that's a planet, right? Not a which I love how he described it, substellar, object.
Mm-hmm.
They don't believe that.
Not that I'm aware of.
Not that
I'm
you're aware of. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
There
That's
could
what
be
I'm
some
asking.
theories. Yeah.
So that general theory has gone to the wayside.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. Got it.
So what he's done is combine Nemesis and Nibiru, though, because he's still working on, maybe there's a brown dwarf out there, and maybe Nibiru is out there. So like, how do we combine like these various theories that have been floating around the past couple decades into one master theory of celestial objects that we aren't aware of that are flying around here?
Yeah, because he kind of foreshadows it for us, being like, anything out there would be so frigidly cold.
Yes.
There would be so little energy hitting the planet from any solar source, whether it be our sun or a different one out there. I mean, there would be so little energy coming from a star that it would have to get its energy somewhere else.
Yeah, because otherwise, and here's the thing, like, how, if we are going to say there is alien life on it, there needs to be some sort of heat, some sort of energy source. It can't just be this like ice ball that's flying out this far from the sun.
Does he mention Titan?
No, he does not mention Titan.
Oh, okay, interesting. Because my first thought when he first mentioned that was Titan. The way that Titan works around Jupiter is that it condenses and it expands and contracts. And so as it's going around Jupiter, it is constantly, the whole planet is like expanding and decreasing in size, which creates energy.
Actually, no, he does talk a bit about needing to be around something with a large gravitational force.
Titan is Saturn. Apologies.
Yeah, so
I think I'm thinking
similar.
of Europa around Jupiter.
Yeah, Europa's around Jupiter. So let's listen to how he combines Nemesis and Nibiru.
Okay.
So I thought to myself, well, look, here we go. If we've got a brown dwarf in the solar system, then it's effectively potentially got its own planetary system attached to it. Because why wouldn't it? I mean, if all the stars in the galaxy potentially have got their own planets, then why couldn't a brown dwarf in our solar system out in the peripheries also have their own planets? And if that's the case, then you've got warmth, you've got potentially a bit of light, but you've certainly got the heat and the gravitational attraction of this thing to make life on a moon habitable. A lot of scientists argue that we couldn't have been visited by aliens on this planet, because how would they have got here from other stars traveling, 5, 10, 15, 20 light years? If we've got a Nemesis object in our outer solar system, then potentially we could have some life in our backyard, so to say.
Now, that was something I thought was very interesting, because that is a huge issue with aliens visiting us. Because I think, number one, if there is alien life out there, we are going to have to hope that our civilization is going to cross paths with their civilization, because maybe they already existed and they blew themselves up and they're no longer sending signals or something like that.
Yeah.
Or maybe there's, a couple, insects out there on another planet who one day will evolve into a sentient species who can actually send signals out, but they're not there yet. And we're going to blow ourselves up before we see them.
Right.
So,
yeah, it's going to be millions of years from now.
Yeah. And even if they are out there, we're going to have to hope that they're close enough that they could travel, or that we can even get their signals, because there's what's called like the knowable universe, essentially, because the universe is expanding and light can only move so fast. There's a huge chunk of the universe that we're never going to be able to see or interact with, no matter what we do.
Right.
So this does solve that problem, because if there is alien life or life on another planet that's close to us, because we know it's not on Mars, right, or Venus, or at least we don't think it's on Mars, who knows, having a planet that is kind of like flying in around us every once in a while, they would be able to visit us. It wouldn't take that long to get all the way to Earth.
God, dude, but it just sounds like such a horrible existence that it would be the life that would pop up and thrive in this kind of environment. Would be so harsh, I would imagine.
Yeah, probably. But I mean, I don't know, maybe not. Maybe
these would really be like very hardy civilization, if you ask me.
Yeah,
I'm shocked that a brown dwarf can put enough energy output out that he believes what I'm saying is I'm surprised that he thinks that a brown dwarf could put out so much energy, but yet still remain hidden within our solar system.
And that is a great question that he does address. Like, why can't we see this brown dwarf?
Okay.
Because we don't, it's not out there as far as we know.
Right.
So what's up with that?
The use of the word brown dwarf gives the impression that it is actually a lit object that is giving out light. Now, if that's the case, it just, there's no way it could be there, because it would be just so easy to spot. It would be ridiculously easy to spot. But the thing about brown dwarfs, and certainly the sub-brown dwarfs, which is, a smaller version and a bit more like Jupiter, is that they kind of use up their fuel really early. So we can see them in other solar systems when they're very, very young. They're still burning up fuel. And then they kind of go dark and dim. And then they become very, very difficult to spot. So if we're thinking about something, we use the word brown dwarf for ease, really, but really we're talking about something that's kind of old, and clearly if Sitchin was right, this thing is old, because it came through the solar system fairly early on in the solar system, so it's at least 4 billion years old.
Okay, so he kind of answers it, and I don't know enough about astronomy to refute him.
That's the thing, is that I'm kind of limited here in my ability to fact check. I'm basically just, looking at articles that are posted online. And as far as I can see, I can't really find any astronomers who are saying that there is a brown dwarf out there. But I guess it is possible that there is something out there that's really dark that we aren't able to see. I think the issue becomes that the more planets we start adding into this, the more likely we're going to spot it, right? So if you have the brown dwarf, like, okay, it's dark, but then you also have Nibiru that's orbiting it. We now have two objects that we could potentially see, or see the impact their gravity's having, right?
Right.
So to me, the more things you're adding in here, the less overall the likelihood that it exists is.
Right. Yeah, you're adding too much complexity to the math equation.
Yeah, exactly. So next up, Noory, naturally, he's like, listen, we got all these astronomers out there. What if they know about this and they're not telling us, man? Can we trust these astronomers?
That's right, dude. Government conspiracy. Cover up.
Yeah. And you're going to like Andy's answer, because his response is basically like, you never know if the cranks are right or not. The cranks could always be right.
Though, Andy, do you think astronomers, if they really found it, would tell us? For some reason, they're holding back. I don't know why, but I just have that feeling.
Do you know what? I sort of had a little conversation recently with a astronomer about alien life. So I sort of threw in the remark that, well, do you know what's the probability that the conspiracy theorists are right? It's not zero. You can't look you can't look at this and say there's no chance whatsoever that they're wrong. There is a chance. There is a chance that people who are studying our historical evidence for alien visitation and so on are right. It's non-zero. When you're looking at something like the Frank Drake equation, when you're looking at that and you're trying to determine whether life could exist out there, you also have to bear in mind this extra factor, which is, hey, what if the government of the world, or the governments of the world, or the science community in themselves unconsciously are in some way preventing us from realizing the truth? Now, governments, I suspect, would be in a position to be able to do that in a very covert way. If it was the people in the scientific community, it would be more to do with attitude. It would be that their knee-jerk reaction to this is nonsense. We're going to say no. It has to be, as Sagan once said, extraordinary evidence for an extraordinary claim.
Paul, I'm going to start calling this like the conspiracist fallacy, where they somehow have this idea that there's a non-zero chance of something happening, right? And so it's the Bigfoot guys being like, well, all these people are making claims that they've seen Bigfoot. They can't all be seeing things. And it's like, yeah, but if Bigfoot doesn't exist, then they are all just seeing things.
Yeah. And it's also
sorry, it's like, if aliens aren't coming to Earth, then yes, these people are all just seeing things.
Yeah, and I think a big part of it too is like, if you go around basing your belief structure on what there is a non-zero chance of existing, you're going to have a really hard time functioning in society. because
Yes.
you could argue that pretty much anything out there is non-zero. There's a non-zero chance that we are in a simulation right now.
Oh yeah.
Is that
and in
helpful?
fact, it may be like a 75% chance we're in a simulation.
It's most likely that we're in a simulation.
Yeah, it's almost certainly we're in a simulation.
Now, what I did appreciate about him, though, that he did, which I think a lot of conspiracists do fall into a trap, is that they pretend that this giant cabal that they're imagining in their head exists like ubiquitously across like government and universities and corporations. He made a very like big line in the sand of like, if we're talking about governments, they could hide alien life from us. But if we're talking about universities, that's different. That's more just like institutional lock-in that we're talking about.
Right.
And which I did appreciate, right? It's not like some sort of Illuminati running everything in the world. He is kind of grounded in reality, you know what I mean, in terms of like how things function.
And I believe there's Illuminous factions, right? There's verses out there, and like the great power politics, it's a multipolar world, and you get factionalization and you get breakups in allyship and stuff like that. Like, to think that one group can run the whole thing is silly, I think.
It's well, and then also to loop in, this is my biggest problem with Graham Hancock, is how much he hates on like archaeologists and professors and stuff like that. It's like when people hate on NASA. If these people at NASA were so nefarious and evil, they wouldn't be working at NASA because they're not making that much money. I just have a hard time believing that people who decide to dedicate their life to like getting a PhD are that nefarious. I think that they can suffer from lock-in, or they can be like, everyone kind of believes this, and then they are in kind of a mental structure where they're going to kind of fall in line. But I don't think it's as overt as Graham says. And that's something I did like about Andy, is I think that he does give a little more love to scientists than Graham will, which I appreciate.
Yeah. I'm going to be highly skeptical of all institutions, though, just outright. So keep on going with that. You can preach that somewhere else, Paul.
I'm going to preach it here.
You can preach that somewhere else. I'm going to keep a real heavy cynicism towards institutions.
I don't want to have to think this much about stuff. I had to look up so much stuff, and I'm going to have to trust that astronomers can give me some information, because I don't really care at the end.
Right. Yeah.
I need someone I can trust to validate stuff and tell me that this is right when it comes to space objects, because
you got to pick your battles, dude. You got to pick your battles.
Astronomy is not my battle.
Yeah.
So let's hear what the astronomers are saying, Chris.
Now, the guys who've come up with Planet Nine have written the papers, done some extremely elegant work mathematically to produce a really good case for the existence of Planet Nine. They essentially rebranded Planet X as Planet Nine. There's a reason they did that, George. They didn't just sort of think, oh, well, let's just call it Planet Nine. Well, there were two reasons. One of them was one of the guys, Mike Brown, he felt somewhat responsible for the sort of loss of status of Pluto, so he kind of renamed a planet Planet Nine. But there's also this desire to take a step back from the kind of work like people like me and Sitchin have done, and a lot of the other researchers on the internet have done, and say, look, this is just a planet. We're just looking for a planet here. Let's just forget all this other stuff. If we can find a new planet, that's a fantastic scientific discovery. All power to them. I get it. From their perspective, the things do not mix. They're interested in the science. They're interested in finding a planet. They're not interested in the kind of stuff I'm talking about, and they probably think it's a load of rubbish. Totally get that. That's fine.
I did appreciate that, right? He very much understands like where they're coming from, and he's like, I'm going to say this crazy stuff about aliens. They're doing this work to find Planet Nine. Let's live in a symbiotic relationship.
We can help each other, right?
Which I appreciated. The other thing that I think is cool too is that like, Nibiru having aliens, or like Nemesis and like all that stuff. That's not necessarily something that anyone's looking at, but like when it comes to there being an additional planet, scientists are looking into that. Like there's a lot of stuff happening out there with like the asteroids and meteors that are clumping in weird ways, and they're like, maybe there's a planet out there.
I also think, though, that astronomy is way more willing to have revolutionary thought, outside thought, than archaeology is.
I have no way of judging that, to be totally honest. I have zero way of judging
I just think of all the crazy revelations that have happened in the last 50 years when it comes to, I mean, quantum mechanics, right? Dark matter, dark energy, string theory, all these crazy things that, I mean, relativity isn't even that old. Black holes aren't even that old, right? These are all insane things. And, archaeology, you can't come in and be like, there was a precursor civilization that was relatively advanced, and everyone's going to be like, yeah, get the hell out of here. It's, it's a straight line, dude. History is a straight line from Sumeria.
Is this your Graham Hancock defense now?
Always.
Always defending Graham. I gotta watch the new Netflix special.
Crashing Graham. It's pretty good. I'm
good?
only about 4 or 5 episodes into it, but it's definitely worth a watch.
I gotta watch it. But I mean, you're probably right, honestly, because they are on the fringe of reality, right? It's the same thing like astrophysicists or physicists in general. They are working on things that do bend what we perceive as reality. Relativity being a great one, quantum mechanics being another great one, like where things are random without predictability. Like that's crazy. So yeah, I don't know. I'll meet some like astrophysicists, and then I'll go and meet an archaeologist, and I'll let you know.
Well, and that's what, but that's also what I'm thinking too. There is that because you're totally right. They aren't dealing with reality a lot of the time, so they're like totally used to people saying weird stuff, and so some guy being like, I know there's got to be a planet out there that aliens exist. They're like, okay, we're not going to do the aliens exist on it part, but like, yeah, there could be another planet out there. There's weird things that are happening at the outreaches of our solar system that can't be explained in our model. There has to be something out there that we're not accounting for.
And here's the thing. There could be another planet out there. There could be alien life on it. Doesn't necessarily mean Citron was right and that the alien life came to Earth and then made humans to mine for gold. Yeah. But, that is possible. Where I kind of want to start with it is like, let's find out if there is another planet. Like, let's find the planet because we have the technology. We can find it if it's out there. And then we can see if there's aliens on it. You know what I mean? But the other thing I've been wondering, and I don't know Citron well enough to know for sure, but we have SETI. We have tons of dishes pointing at the sky.
Right.
If these aliens are out there, why don't we get signals from them? Why aren't we hearing from them at all?
I think the argument there would be that if you're not pointing the radio satellites at the part of the sky in which the planet exists, you would never catch it. I mean, it's something like 2% of our space is covered by radio satellites.
I don't know. I feel
and
like.
And so, I mean, there's just so much, dude, there is so much space out there that it would be impossible to capture it if we weren't looking directly for it. If we didn't know it's probably going to be about right here, you would miss it.
I don't know. I just feel like if they are out there, why wouldn't they want to talk to us?
So I'm generalizing a theory here. Okay. What if it's like an intelligent virus or something like that like took over its hosts, or like some kind of parasite that was able to like hitchhike off of plumes from geysers or something and like hitchhike to Earth.
So this is almost like a expanse type theory with the
proto-molecule, something like that, that they're somehow able to like take over. And so our elite power structure is just like virus brained Nibiru.
It only affected the elites.
Right, exactly. It only affected the elites.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a theory.
And then the virus gets to live like gods.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
So Elon Musk is a Nibiru virus.
Right, exactly.
All right. That's fair. I'll take that. I'll take that. So George Noory is like, wait, so basically based on what you're saying and what they're looking into, was Sitchin sort of right about stuff?
Actually connected with Sitchin's work as well. The way this thing was aligned in the heavens, the axis that it was on and where it would pin up. And I thought, hold on, guys, you're actually saying the same stuff as him. It's an inclined orbit. It's pointing on an axis from its perihelion position that coincides with the kind of constellations that Sitchin was also talking about. And actually, they talk about it being the same size as well. They're talking about a super Earth, and he talked about Nibiru being something that was like 5 Earth masses or so. And suddenly, Planet 9 starting to look a lot like Nibiru. The issue then was that they're saying, well, this thing's about, 800, 500 astronomical units. They're calling it 500 now. That actually means that it's got, it's necessarily got an orbit of tens of thousands of years, and that's where the break is. So it's not, that 3,600 number doesn't really fit with it, but lots of other things do. That kind of that provides some merit to look at Sitchin's thing and say, well, maybe he was right. Maybe he was right. Maybe there is a non-zero possibility that Sitchin was right, but they don't want to think about it. I understand why they don't want to think about it, but they don't want to think about it.
Non-zero chance that Sitchin is right.
That he got everything right.
Except for the things he got wrong.
Yeah, except for all the things he got wrong.
That was my favorite part about what Andy just did, was he was like, look, it sounds just like what Sitchin described for like these reasons. And then obviously Sitchin was wrong for these reasons. But those other things, I'm like, so it's not the same thing. Like, you're discovering two different objects.
I guess I'm going to give him a pass on being completely wrong about how long it takes for this planet to go around the sun. I just think that, especially back when he was first talking about this kind of stuff, I think he was probably looking for, 3,600. It's such a nice number. And it's like, well, 360, we have 365 days. We have 360 in a circle. There's, you know what I mean? That kind of stuff, that he probably really liked 360 and just was like 3,600,
I don't know if that's why he did it. I think it was based on the text. I don't know for sure though, because I haven't read Sitchin.
Right, but I'm just saying that I guarantee you he read 3,600 somewhere, or 360, whatever. That's what I'm saying, is that it would have been such an important number for early humans that, of course, 360 would be something he read, but it wouldn't be right.
Yeah, I mean, that's all I'm saying, is that he was not correct about it. Like, this is much larger than he's talking about. It's like tens of thousands of years potentially.
Right. Yeah.
But here's the important part, Chris, is that even if they do find this planet, they aren't going to tell us about the aliens on it.
So let's say then they find this thing. Let's say they find this thing, and they start to make some measurements
and admit it. And admit it.
Exactly. Admit it. They are going to hold on to, for grim life, the possibility that, hey, we found a planet, but there's no life on there. No life, no life, no life, no life. Because, they don't want to cross that Rubicon. And I understand why, but they don't want to cross that Rubicon.
Now, here's my thing. Why wouldn't they, whoever they is, want us to know that there's alien life on another planet?
Because we'll freak out.
I don't know if any of this will play out the way that he says it would, because I think if aliens are invading our airspace, that's one thing, right? And we don't know what it is or how to deal with it. I could see the government covering that up. I have a hard time saying that if there is life on another planet, that we are going to cover that up. I think that would be the largest scientific discovery of all time. And I don't think that it would be hidden.
Not if they come to government secretly.
I don't know. This is where I have a hard time with ufologists, is that I don't see this playing out the way that they're saying. I don't think that it would be this secret. I think that the thing that we cover up is the fact that we have no idea what it is and we don't know what's going on. It's that incompetent aspect of I'm scared of it, so I'm going to sweep it under the rug. I don't think it's going to be a situation of we have proof that there's aliens, whether or not it's sentient or not. Right. I just feel like everyone is going to want to share that. Like, if I was a scientist and I figure that out, I'd be like, I'm telling the world and I'm now the most famous person on earth.
Yeah, you would think, or let's just say, I hope that whatever it is that we finally get, if there is life out there on another planet or extra dimensional or whatever it ends up being, that the proof of it would be so profound that they wouldn't be able to hide it. And that's my general hope.
Yeah, I just have a hard time thinking that it's going to be hidden. Like I said, I think if it's a situation of
and that's where I think you and I disagree on some stuff, and I think you're just naive. to think that knowledge like that, there wouldn't be a group of people who would want to hold on to it until they knew more, right? And who says when they know more, right? And so is it decades that they keep whatever it is a secret? Is it years? Is it months? Is it weeks? We're not going to know immediately when it happens.
I would say you're overly distrustful of the scientific community without much reason to be.
How much did you enjoy those JFK top secret documents?
That is different. That's the government.
How much are you?
That's not the scientific community.
That?
Those are two completely different things. You can't say that universities and the United States deep state or the CIA or the FBI are the same thing. The University of Hawaii, who has giant telescopes being shot at the sky, is very different from the CIA. Those are not the same.
Okay. Anyways, keep going.
All right. So here's the thing, Chris. What about reptilians?
Well, Paul, we haven't heard reptilians in a while.
So let's find out.
You guys have been talking about a race that came down to genetically change us.
Right.
Do you think, have you ever seen Land of the Lost, the actual, like, the TV show? Do you think the producers of the show got the idea for the reptilian, for the three stacks, from the people who've studied the reptilian race that came down and changed us?
Oh, there's no question that a lot of the Hollywood shows, in my opinion, have been spearheaded by actual events, investigative events, things that are going on, guests that we've had on this show, and that they've used that information to develop their own programs. What do you think, Andy?
The reptilian concept for me is a bit of a struggle because it gets tied in, with my own stuff, I guess, and Sitchin's stuff with respect to the Anunnaki, because a lot of people who consider the Anunnaki and think about the Anunnaki tend to think of them in this reptilian format. Now, he used to write about them being, more like us. He's human. So if reptilian is a sort of a symbolic understanding in terms of, the symbolism behind a snake and a serpent and so on, then I get that. But if it's actually literally sort of humanoid lizards walking around the place or shape-shifting lizards walking around the place, I start to have a little bit of an issue with that. But
so not a big reptilian fan.
Not a big reptilian fan, which is a bummer.
I'm okay with it. I'm all right with that. I disagree that these Nibirians
feels right.
I don't even know how you would say that. There's no way they would look like us.
Yeah.
There's absolutely 0% chance they would look like us.
Well, here's the thing though, if Nibiru, or Nibirians, I should say, did come to Earth and make humans, maybe they did make them look like themselves a little bit. I think that's
so they used what was here and then put a little of themselves into like a walking monkey or something.
Yeah, like a little bit of hybridization with the local population.
Right. Yeah. They found an Australopithecus, and they were like, well, if we put a little alien in that, we might be able to make a human.
Yeah. The other question I have is, like, did they not have robots? That just feels easier.
Robots would always be easier. It's so hard to know what exactly other planetary civilizations are going to look like, how they're going to develop, what they're going to develop. And so if you never really focused heavily on artificial intelligence, I'll call it, right? Robotics, maybe it was easier for them to affect genetics for some reason. Maybe because they're a virus, genetics was way more easier for them to mess with than doing robotics or something more artificial.
Yeah, back to the proto-molecule.
Right.
That
exactly.
would be the coolest way of going about it, is just like send a virus to seed a planet for you.
Right. Yeah. So I actually stole that from Orson Scott Card, who wrote the Ender series. In his Speaker for the Dead series, they go to another planet that has a virus that is intelligent.
Oh, yeah. Well, we got another caller, Chris, who's like, this kind of sounds like Fifth Element to me.
Ooh, I love that movie. Such a good movie.
I was watching a movie called The Sixth Element, and that portrays that the evil entity coming into our solar system, portraying Nibiru.
And I think it's Fifth Element.
Fifth Element. That's the one with Bruce Willis, right?
Yeah, and he's absolutely right. Alfonso, you're absolutely right. There is this incoming object that's kind of a burning sort of star-like object. And, I took a video of this when I saw it, because I saw it myself, and I was like, oh, my God, I know exactly what that is. So, they drew upon that. The makers of that film drew upon this particular sort of, whether you want to call it mythology or the catastrophic flavor of this incoming brown dwarf. It is part of that film, so it's quite an amazing thing to see, actually.
Paul, I'm confused. So at the end of the day, all he really cares about is this planet, right? Not how it's affected Earth, not if there's aliens on it or anything like that. All I've really heard him talk about with any clarity, with any real belief, any real pinpoint precision, that he believes that there is some kind of planet out there circling our sun.
He thinks there's something out there. He does touch on aliens, and that if we do find it, they won't tell us about the aliens, and that he thinks that there's a non-zero chance that Sitchin's right. But he does keep it more grounded in let's find the thing. Let's find the thing. But he does dig into aliens, but I think he knows that the evidence is a lot weaker there.
Right.
And that there really isn't any. You know what I mean? And I think step one in the process is showing that the thing exists, and then we can get into what's on the thing or what was on the thing.
Well, as far as the evidence for aliens, them interacting with Earth and stuff like that, he wouldn't be able to really reproduce anything that Sitchin hasn't already done, or any of these now other ancient alienographers, whatever they're providing, right? So his thing has become kind of like the science behind Nibiru.
Yeah, his thing is because Sitchin was so he was so into ancient Sumerian texts and more the archaeology side of things. And then where he's coming into play is let's talk about the astronomy side of things,
right?
And what we could actually find that's out there, and what evidence we have to support that.
Well, I wish him all the best of luck, Paul. I hope old Andy Lloyd finds his Planet X.
I really hope that we
Nibiru.
do find another planet. Yeah, I think it would be a lot of fun if there is a ninth one. I mean, after Pluto got knocked out, I miss it. I miss having 9.
Planetoid, dude. What a disgusting name, too.
Pretty lame name. Well, Chris, on a scale of 1 to 5 brown dwarfs that hurl asteroids at Earth, what do you give Planet X?
I'm going to give him a 3, maybe a 3.5. It was a little bit more science heavy, right? He really wanted to focus on astronomers giving credence to there being something out at the far reaches of our solar system, which means that I get to miss all the stuff I love, which is the aliens coming to early man, showing them agriculture, giving them culture, aliens as God teachers. I've always really liked that idea. And if you're going to talk about fiction so much, you really need to add a little bit of that spiel, a little bit more into it there, because I love that stuff, dude. I really do. Sumerians were weird. The Sumerians were weird. They're weird culture. The Egyptians, weird. They're strange. Olmecs, early Chinese civilization, dude. All of it very, very strange. And I want to know more. I need to know more. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, dude. Very, very weird. I don't think it's Nibiru.
You don't think it's Nibiru?
But I do like the idea. That there is this kind of large planet circling the outer reaches of our solar system, causing havoc sometimes.
Yeah.
That's great. That's a lot of fun.
That's fun lore. I think you're right. I wish that there was more lore. He tried to stay pretty grounded, but went out there a couple times. So I'm gonna give him a 3.
Yeah.
I appreciated that he showed some love for the scientists because I think they need love. You know what I mean? These guys, couple of nerds
without that.
Couple of nerds just sitting there looking at telescopes all day, dude. You got to show them a little love.
They're nighttime people.
They're night people. Much
they're nighttime people.
Like the audience of Coast to Coast AM.
PM, baby. Oh. Yeah.
Well, I was talking about, but also us.
They're night people. Night people.
Night people. Well, that's been the show. We appreciate you listening. We will be on air every Thursday, so please check us out. We love you all and have a great rest of your week.
All conspiracy, all the time. Later.